In this video, I'm going to go through my process for mixing wide ambient electric guitars. But before we get started, my name is Ed, you're watching Stokes Sounds, and if you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and also comment. And if you want to support the channel, feel free to head over to our website, stokesounds.com, where we have mixing templates, vocal presets, masterclasses, and also this Stokes Sound podcast. Now let's get into this video. I've got a song here by Mendel Moses. I will actually leave the final release in the description below for you to listen to, but let's just take a look at the song here with the guitars in. So as you can see, I did the processed and unprocessed, but let's just listen to the guitars only. So the guitars were recorded by an incredible guitarist, Gary Parker, and he sent me all of his guitar arrangements and what he felt like he needed for the song. What's really good about working with great musicians is if you get a good musician, someone that understands kind of the context of production and the song itself, they kind of give you back files that you know are going to work. These files here, the way that I've done them is he's done me left and right doubles, and it's great that he's done that because it gives me the option to create a stereo widened image of the guitars within the mix itself. So you'll see here that I have my all guitar group, and then I have my separate groups of buses, guitar 1, guitar 2, guitar 3, and each part that are doubles go to a bus and I process the bus. The reason why I do that is one, CPU, and also if I feel like I want both left and right guitars to do the same thing, then I'd rather just do everything on one channel than have multiple channels with multiple plugins on, more room for mistakes and all of that sort of stuff. So that's why I keep everything organized and how I like it, and I group everything and I process the groups. On guitar 1, the group, you'll see that I've got a noise suppressor by Waves NS1. The reason for that, I started with that on the individual channels, is because I noticed when I got the guitars through, there was a lot of kind of noise from the noise floor. So that could be the jack lead, could be the electrics, it could be the amp, lots of things. So if we take a listen to the first lot of guitars that we got going on, and I'll remove the NS1 plugin and I'll have it on, and you'll hear the difference that this is doing. It's subtle, but it does make a big difference when you've got 10 guitar layers all layered up with a little bit of noise in the actual recording itself. It really does add up to make kind of a big noise wall of sound. So that's why I put that on there first. The way that I approach guitars, especially kind of these ambient guitars, is I want them to kind of sit back in the mix. They're not necessarily like a rock and roll track where everything, the guitars are forward. In this kind of pop record, it's a little bit more kind of to the back and acts more as like a synth pad. My first approach is to EQ. I use the FabFilter Pro Q3 just for some subtraction EQ, and here I'm just taking out some low end, some low mids, and again some highs, just because I didn't need that high. There's nothing up there in the electric, and there's nothing down at the bottom. It's kind of very middly sounding. Then I used the API 550A EQ, and I'm using this for color. So if we actually look at what these plugins are doing, I'll mute the API and we just got the EQ on first. Straight away you can hear that when I take the EQ off, it's more muddy, there's a lot more bottom end to it, and then when I put the EQ on, it's a lot brighter and a lot cleaner. But I haven't actually added anything at this point. I've just taken away what I don't like. Then go to the API, and this API is adding kind of color, and on here I'm boosting 10K. I felt like taking out some more low mids, so I did, and that's all I did with this one. So you can see it just brightens up a little. It's very subtle, but as I say, all these subtle things do make a big difference, throughout the track. And then same kind of thing with the guitar 2. You'll find that because it was recorded by the same person with the same guitar amp, same interface, same everything, I'm using a lot of the same plugins. So a lot of it is copied and paste, but with this one, the EQ curve is slightly different, and that's just because on the second guitar part, he's playing higher up, and because he's playing higher up, I need less low end in. So everything is within context, and I tend to do all like my EQ shaping and everything with the music playing, because sometimes you'll find that you'll make, a single audio track sound incredible on its own, and then you put it with everything else and suddenly it doesn't sound great. And that's because everything, needs to be cohesive. It needs to be in context with what you are giving. And sometimes something can sound terrible, and then you put it within the mix, and then it sounds brilliant. But solo doesn't sound as good. So, don't be kind of conned by that. And then I've got Guitar 3. I actually played these ones. I can see because I've used the Waves guitar amp, and I was just doing some kind of staccato guitar parts we can see here. And then again, some EQ and some API, same kind of processing. Then if we look down further, you'll see that some of the guitars are straight to the guitar bus and don't have a separate bus, and that's because they are separate parts. We've got some ambient stuff going on here. So that's like sustained parts. Again, EQ took away what I didn't like. And then I use some saturation, the decapitator. One thing I always say is sometimes if you want something to stand out in a mix, there's kind of a lot of ways to do so. The most obvious one is just a volume, just to lift it up. But there are other ways, for example, saturation, or you've got transient designer or panning. There's so many multiple ways of getting things to stand out in a mix without boosting volume. It's very easy just to boost volume. So you have drums, you boost that, bass, you boost that, guitars, you boost that, pianos, you boost that, and everything then just becomes this wall of sound and nothing is standing out. So you've got to think of it as in a technical perspective as well, and what different ways can I make something stand out in a mix tonally more so than volume, because by adding saturation you are giving it perceived loudness. You may not necessarily be increasing the actual dB level of the volume of the guitar, but the saturation is giving this perceived loudness that is louder in the mix. And it's just a better way to think, because you can get louder mixes, you get more clarity. So try and think of, when you want to boost a volume, maybe think, okay, what else can I do instead of lifting that volume up? So I used the saturation in this just because I wanted to have that a little bit kind of brighter and a little bit more grittier and dirtier. And so that's why I did that. Then I've got a motif part here. Again, similar kind of stuff. Then we've got a guitar lick. Again, the NS1, EQ, and then this time I used some reverb, but actually on the individual track. And the reason for that is because that part I wanted to have reverb on. I could have used automation, but workflow reasons, I just decided to put the Valhalla Vintage Verb on the actual track in itself, and I'm just kind of adding some reverb just to push it back in the mix. Then we've got this solo part, which sounds like this. Again, this is through his guitar amp, so tonally he's done his distortion, he's done how he liked it. I just did some carving with some EQ and again some saturation. I felt like I wanted it to poke out more and again be dirtier, so I just hit the drive button in and it gave me what I wanted. And then we got these two parts here. Same thing EQ, but with these parts, the first part is I wanted to add some lo-fi. This is a Pro Tools plugin. I don't remember why I use lo-fi, probably because I was having enough of the decapitator and I thought, well, I wanted to try something different. It's a different guitar part, so let's just change the plugin and see where we're at. And then to create this kind of ambient effect within the mix, I used the S1 Imager by Waves, which is a really good plugin for putting things in a specific place within the mix. Now, a lot of people, they think they've got two speakers, a left and a right, and you put things to the left and you put things to the right, but there's also kind of front to back. And this Imager I was trying to place these guitar parts kind of a little bit kind of further back to the side and the other one the other way, and kind of sculpt this kind of image of the guitars in this mix, and not just think about left and right. So this plugin is really cool for that. Then all of these guitars go to a guitar bus, and on the guitar bus I decided I wanted to add some color to the overall guitars like it was recorded on an analog desk. And so in this case I used the API Lindell plugin 50 series by Plugin Alliance, and that just kind of gave me that API color that I wanted. So if I just take everything off on the main bus and we just hear what that's doing, again, it's very, very subtle stuff. Very, very, very subtle, and I just used that just to give me some more saturation. And because I went into the API console emulation, I decided to go with the API EQ as well. This one, I do a lot of these kind of moves at the end of the mix. You know, if I feel like I want something to poke out more, or there's too much low end in something, I will do final kind of massage adjustments on the bus and not individually. Again, it's just workflow. And on this one, I don't even know if I did anything with it. I don't think I did. I just have it there to hand. It's just in my mixing template. Then I've got my FabFilter Pro Q3, again, just sculpting the sound as a collective. So, you know, as you saw, I did individually EQ, and then now I'm doing one overall EQ. And I just felt like with all of these guitar tracks going on with the whole song, I just felt like there was a little bit too much low end in there. I can hear a big difference with that on my speakers. It's kind of suddenly the guitars get a lot thinner. And then the last plugin that I did have on, and this was something I did kind of right at the very end of the mix, I felt like the guitars sounded great, they sounded ambient, they had this kind of wide image, but I just felt like sometimes they were getting lost. And yes, I could have done volume automation in certain areas of the track, in the arrangement, just to kind of lift them up. And I did that as well in some places. So I decided to do a little boost at 1.4, just a couple of dB, and that just kind of made the guitars just sit a little bit more forward. So I created that ambient kind of wideness, and now I just want to put that a little bit forward. And so I use this plugin just to add a little bit of 1.4K. If we listen to that on and off. That is making a huge difference in the actual kind of tonal shaping of all of the guitars as one. As mentioned, Gary did record these guitars with how he wanted it to sound, but I felt like within this mix specifically, I needed some more reverb and certain delays to blend better with what I was given with the actual song. So I used the spring reverb, which is very popular on guitars. I just used the AKG BX20, and then I used some filtering again to not have so much low end in the reverb. I don't like low end in reverb. It muddies up the mixes, so that's why I did an EQ. So if we listen to, let's look at the guitar solo. It's adding like a lot of space, and you know, spring reverbs are popular on electric guitars, kind of gives that metallic kind of gritty dirt kind of sound, and it goes well with what he was actually playing. So I decided to go with the spring reverb, and then added some delay. That was just to kind of add some more spatial elements to the guitar solo. So if we look at what the delay is I'm using the Echo Boy, and that is just a 1/8 in the style of Fat, and that's it. So let's just play the guitar solo with the delay. It's adding emotion, it's adding movement, and you know, I felt like I liked it, so I kept it in. So that's the guitars that we got. So if we just play the track with all of these guitars on, processed and unprocessed. And that's it, and that's how I processed wide ambient electric guitars. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again for another video next week.